So the issue of multicollinearity. Today, I'll start with the issue of multicollinearity. Now, from our previous discussion of k-variable analysis, you have some idea that multicollinearity indicates correlation among the explanatory variables. Now think about a k-variable model. Think about the demand equation. And in a very simple demand equation, too, you will incorporate several variables like price of the commodity, income, price of the related goods, taste and preference, say. These four variables you are incorporating. Okay, and gender. Gender is also very important while you are estimating the demand. Okay, and place of residence is also very important, whether urban or rural. Okay, so suppose you are considering these variables, urban or rural, that is place of residence, gender. You are also incorporating the basic informations related to price of related goods, income of the consumer. Okay, so these variables you are incorporating. Now, in a k-variable analysis, when we plan for constructing a regression model, we pick and choose the variables, which may affect the demand, and under most of the circumstances, there will be some relation among the variables, Everybody has information that taste and preference may depend on income. Taste and preference may be related to the price of concerned commodity and price of the related good. And it is also related to the gender. It is also related to the place of residence. Okay. So it cannot happen that taste and preference is something which will be totally unrelated to every issue we will consider in construction of demand equation. It will be very much related. It is the reality. Okay. Now, if you consider income, that income may also depend on place of residence, whether you are in the urban area, whether you are in the rural area, okay? And that may also depend on gender, okay? So income may be related to gender, income may be related to the place of residence, okay? So if you consider a k-variable model, actually, we are modeling a theory, and it is necessary that the variables will be somehow related. So if I plan for selecting some variables which will be totally uncorrelated, then never we will be able to present a model. So multicollinearity is a matter of degree. Always there will be some correlation among the variables. Now the question is how serious the correlation is. If the correlation is serious, then we have to face the issue of multicollinearity. So remember that always there will be some relation. Okay? We can look at the thing from other angle too. We are telling that all the regression coefficients we are presenting in a multiple regression model, these are related to the partial correlations. So what is a partial correlation? Explanatory power of a particular variable given the rest. So it is a conditional matter. Given the rest, given the situation that rest of the variables have explained something, what new this particular variable explains. Now, when there is this kind of context, given that rest of the variables explain something, then I have to add something new here. It means the concerned variable has some relation with the rest. Given rest of the variables have explained this percentage of variation in yi or study variable, what will be my contribution, or what will be the contribution of the variable concerned? So this is the idea. So this is also giving you some idea that variables are somehow, to some extent, interrelated. So multicollinearity, remember, is a tricky problem. Always there is some correlation. Question is how serious the correlation is. So if this correlation is greater than a particular level, then it will be serious, and then it will affect our estimated values, variance, covariances, or the factor we will check today. What are the consequences of multicollinearity? Okay, so remember, multicollinearity is a very, very tricky problem. Always there is some correlation, some association among the explanatory variables. We have to understand how serious the relation is or correlation is. If it crosses certain level, in that case only, it will be considered as a serious concern, and we will call this problem as problem of multicollinearity. So formally, let me introduce the problem for multicollinearity introduced by Ragnar Frisch. Refers to a situation where a variable dealt with are subject to two or more relations. In a more restricted sense, it refers to a situation where, because of strong interrelationships among the independent variables, it becomes difficult to disentangle their separate effects on the dependent variable. Okay. If there is serious association among the variables, there is a very strong association or strong correlation among the variables, actually we will be not able to understand what is the contribution of a particular explanatory variables. In context of hypothesis testing issue in a k-variable analysis, we discussed this matter. Overall, the model is significant. However, whenever we are picking and choosing a particular estimated value, we are finding it to be insignificant. In other words, the associated explanatory variable is always becoming insignificant. Okay. The question is how strong these interrelationships have to be to cause a problem. Thus, with multicollinearity, the problem is not of existence or non-existence, but of degree of multicollinearity. So always there is some existence of collinearity among the variables, However, you have to detect whether this collinearity is serious or not. If explanatory variables are orthogonal, that is totally independent, then the coefficients of x's in the multiple regression equation would be the same as those given by simple regression of y on each x in turn. So no further insight is provided by the multiple regression. Okay, so this particular point is indicating if all x columns are totally independent to each other, orthogonal to each other, in that case, the estimated values will be exactly equal to if you run separate regressions on each of y on x. So k-variable analysis will be not able to give you any further insight beyond the simple regression where we have one explained variable and one explanatory variable. Actually, remember, when you are jumping to the k-variable analysis from the two-variable analysis, all of your regression coefficients are becoming related to the partial correlations, not the simple correlation. In a two-variable analysis, beta hat is related to the simple correlation. However, if you move to k-variable analysis, your beta hat is becoming related to the notion of partial correlations. So it is becoming conditioned matter, conditional matter. Given these variables can explain this much variation in yi, what will be the explanatory power of the new variable? Okay. So this itself is indicating, this idea itself is indicating that there is some degree of association among the explanatory variables. Therefore, interdependence is required but we do not know the possible degree. Thus, problem of multicollinearity is rather tricky problem since it is a problem of degree. So remember, multicollinearity is not at all a problem of existence or non-existence. However, it is a problem of degree. There are several consequences. So formally, we want to read all these consequences. Standard errors of the estimated regression coefficients increase sharply with multicollinearity. So variance of beta hat vector that increases sharply in presence of multicollinearity. And you are understanding if there is any effect on variance of beta hat, the estimators are not best estimators, number one. Then whatever inference you will draw on the basis of T statistics, all these inferences will be erroneous, okay? So these will be the consequences. So let's try to understand how variance of beta hat will be affected in presence of multicollinearity. So let's consider the regression model. I'm extending the two variable model, just incorporating one more explanatory variables. So here we have two explanatory variables. It is the simplest form of k variable model, just increasing number of explanatory variable by one compared to the two variable analysis. So we are considering yt is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 x2t plus beta 3 x3t plus ut. The variance of beta 2 hat, here I didn't present the detailed states, how we are reaching to this particular state, because, already in the matter I sent you, I think I uploaded this one. Everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We only uploaded the inclusion of irrelevant variables.
Okay.
Yes, irrelevant.
Okay. So variance of beta 2 hat, that is sigma square divided by summation x2 square 1 minus r square. And this r square is nothing but the simple correlation between x2 and x3. R square is simple correlation between x2 and x3. So this detailed calculation of variance of beta 2 hat in the regression model, the same format. Yt is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 x2 t plus beta 3 x3 t plus ut, that we did in the last class, and all these calculations are with you. So I'm using that calculation. You have to, put the matters here. So in case of multicollinearity, if the question is show that variance of beta 2 hat is equal to sigma square by s22 into 1 minus r square 23. Actually, you have to do all these steps. Here, I didn't repeat the steps because we did it in the last class only. So the variance of beta 2 hat is given by variance of beta 2 hat is equal to sigma square by s22 into 1 minus r23 square. And in the similar fashion, if you calculate variance of beta 3 hat, everything will be similar, only in place of S22, you will get S33. Okay. So follow the calculation from these steps and you will get the, you will get the results. So, this is the structure. So variance of beta 2 hat, variance of beta 2, beta 3 hat, these are sigma square by S22. S22 means summation x2t square into 1 minus r23 square. This r23 square is nothing but simple correlation between x2 and x3. Simple correlation between x2 and x3. Now, if it is very serious, in other words, if this correlation is very high, we are calling the context multicollinearity. If the correlation between x2 and x3 is serious, it is high, in that case, we are calling the problem or presenting the problem as presence of multicollinearity. And I hope everybody is understanding. If these R2, 3 square value is very high, there will be a serious impact on both variance of beta 2 hat and variance of beta 3 hat. Will it be underestimated or overestimated? I'm asking you the question. The value is sigma square by S xx, in case of beta 2 hat, it is summation x2t square. In case of beta 3 hat, it is summation x3t square. This part is same. So if R2 3 square is very high, whether the variances will be overestimated or underestimated? What is your answer?
Overestimated.
Overestimated. Rudra is telling overestimated. Everyone will go with that. If R2 3 square is very high, very close to 1, say 0.7. So denominator will be lesser. Okay. And if the other things remaining constant, the denominator is lesser, in that case, this value will be higher. Okay. So the variances, there is a chance that variances will be higher compared to the true variances. If this R2, 3 square is high, there is a chance that variance of beta 2 hat, variance of beta 3 hat, these will be comparatively higher, or it will be higher compared to the true variances. Now the question is, then looking at the R2, 3 square or this kind of values of the simple correlation among the explanatory variables, then can we really argue, yes, there is a presence of a multicollinearity, or in other words, we are finding that multicollinearity may result in inflated variances. So if the variance values are very high, variance of beta 2 hat is very high, variance of beta 3 hat is very high, in that case, can we use these estimated values of detecting multicollinearity? Can we use this as rule of thumb? If the variance values are very high, can we use this concept as a detection criterion of multicollinearity? So this question is coming. We are finding that in the variance values, these correlations are coming. And if really the correlation is very high, in that case, there is a chance that these variances will be very high. So next thing is, so if the variance values are very high, will it indicate the presence of multicollinearity? Or these high values of variances can be, whether these high values of variances can be used as detection mechanism of multicollinearity? What will be your answer? Can we go for setting these as a rule of thumb? Ujan?
Ma'am, can I try?
Yes, Naureen?
Ma'am, since the variance is the inflated variance, so I don't think so that just looking at the variance, we can say that whether multicollinearity exists or not.
Your answer is not clear. I'm telling that if R2, 3 square is high, in that case, the variance will be higher. So can we set this as a rule of thumb in that case? If the high variance, that is giving a reflection of multicollinearity, this is the question. If for high values of R square, variance becomes higher, can we use high variance matter signaling multicollinearity?
ম্যাম হাই ভেরিয়েন্স তো ইররেলেভেন্ট ভেরিয়েবলস ইনক্লুড করলেও হতে পারে।
If we look at the formula, then I'm not talking about the presence of irrelevant variables here.
Ma'am, if the population variance is high, then also the variance of beta 2 can be
From
high.
where you are bringing the idea of population variance in this formula?
This one is sigma square. That is also. Or if there is a presence of outlier in the x variables.
Okay, so simply looking at the formula, if there is no outliers, then too this S22 may be very high, S33 may be very high, or S22 may be low, S33 may be low. This sigma square values, this may be very high, you know. So variance of beta 2 hat and variance of beta 3 hat can be very high. If sigma square values are very high, okay, that is error variance is high, or if these values, summation x2 squared, summation x3 squared, these values are low, okay, because of many reasons, or truly it is low. It's not that I have done some mistake. By the nature of the data, S22 and S33 may be very, very low. Okay. So here there is also the calculation of beta 2 hat and beta 3 hat, and that may be presented in this format. Just a minute. So here there is a calculation of covariance too. And from this calculation also, you will find that looking at the steps, you will understand that this covariance will be also affected by the presence of multicollinearity. Okay. So R23 square, which is the correlation between X2 and X3, is indicator of degree of multicollinearity. Now, if R23 square is very high, variance of beta 2 hat and variance of beta 3 hat will be high, as you mentioned. However, there are three reasons for which these variances can be higher. For high value of sigma square, for low values of summation x square, and for high values of R23 square. Okay. So even if R23 square is high, if sigma square is low and S22 is high, we will not observe any high values of variance. Okay, because other factors will reduce the impact of multicollinearity. On the other hand, if R23 square is low, standard errors can be high because of high value of sigma square and low value of S22. Thus, high values of standard errors will not unambiguously indicate the multicollinearity problem. So for that matter, if variance values are high, that cannot be used as rule of thumb, because the variance value may be high because of any other reasons, or in presence of high multicollinearity, very high correlation, because of some counter effect of other two factors, the variance values may be low. So Nazma, now you got the answer why we cannot use the variance values to detect multicollinearity problem?
Yes, ma'am.
Here there is an example. Suppose X2 has this kind of values. It is 1 for first 5 observations, and then 0 for next 5, and again 10 zeros. So there are 20 observations. Among them, first 5 values are 1 and rest is 0. X3 is another variable for which the first 5 observations are equal to 0, then next 5 observations are 1, and next 10 observations are 0. X4 is a variable where first 10 observations are 1 and next 10 observations are 0. So from the structure of X2 and X3, we are finding that X4 is clearly X2 plus X3. However, if you try to find out correlation between X2, X3, X2, X4, X3, X4, these values will be very, very low. Okay, so it will be your homework to find out the correlation between X2, X3, X2, X4, and X3, X4. So we are finding perfect relation between X4 and X2 and X3. However, if you calculate the correlations, R2, 3, R3, 4, R2, 4, you will find the values are very low. Okay. Now, some statisticians as well as econometricians started to tell that, therefore, in the variance calculation, we should not use simple correlation. Okay, we should replace this correlation by the notion of multiple correlation among the explanatory variables. So some statisticians and econometricians started to argue that high value of variance cannot be used as detecting factor of multicollinearity because we are using the simple correlation in the formula. So they suggested this simple correlation should be replaced by multiple correlation among the explanatory variables. It is not a multiple correlation between Y and rest of the explanatory variables. Rather, it is a multiple correlation among the explanatory variables. Okay. So, in case of more than 2 explanatory variables, econometricians started to argue that we require multiple correlation of each of the explanatory variables with other explanatory variables. They suggested the formula like this: variance of beta 3 hat or beta 2 hat should be presented as sigma square divided by SII. In case of beta 3 hat, it will be summation x3t square. In case of beta 2 hat, it will be summation x2t square. However, this R square should be replaced by multiple R square among all explanatory variables. Now, yes, okay, we came from the simple correlation to the multiple correlation among the explanatory variables. However, other econometricians argued that this is also not flawless because, again, the variance can be high because of high sigma square, low value of SII, and Ri square is high. Okay, so if Ri square is high, then also these two factors, sigma square may be very low, SII may be high, and in that case, the impact of high Ri square will be adjusted. So thus high Ri square is neither necessary nor sufficient to get high standard errors, and thus multicollinearity by itself need not cause high standard errors. Okay, so you remember all these things because later when we have to formulate several detection mechanism of multicollinearity, all these factors will help you, how you will frame a detection methodology. Other consequences of multicollinearity is that the parameter estimates would be very sensitive to addition or deletion of observations, okay? So this is also very important. What I am telling that the first consequence is the variance values will be high. Okay, however, there are some arguments, counter arguments too. The second condition, what I am telling that in presence of multicollinearity, the estimated values will sharply fluctuate as we incorporate one new observation or delete one particular observation. So if you add one new information, it may happen that your estimated coefficients are varying substantially. Okay, so I'm giving an example here. So I hope everybody has pen and paper with you. If you do not, please bring pen and paper. Okay, so what I want to show you, small change in the sample composition will produce drastic changes in the estimates of regression coefficients. That is, estimators are not robust with respect to the change in the sample composition. This is very important. Estimators are not robust with respect to the change in the sample composition. If you make a little bit change to your sample composition, in that case, estimated values may sharply change. Okay, so let's consider an example. Consider Sxx is equal to, say, 200, 150, 150, 113. And Sxy is equal to 350 and 263. Okay, so find out beta 1 hat and beta 2 hat here. You are understanding there are two explanatory variables. This information I am giving for the deviation form. Okay, so this information I am giving for deviation form. Okay, so the underlying deviation form of the regression model is given by yi is equal to beta 1 hat This is the underlying deviation form. Small yi indicates capital yi minus y bar, small x1i, capital X1i minus x1 bar, small x2i, capital X2i minus x2 bar. So we can form 200 beta 1 plus 150 beta 2 is equal to 350. This is one equation. And another equation is, I'm writing the normal equations. Another equation is 150 beta 1 plus 113 beta 2 is equal to 263. So everybody is fine with these two equations, these two normal equations. There should not be any hat here. So I'm using the normal equation format. This we are using. Actually, you can use beta 1 hat, beta 2 hat here. Everybody is understanding these equations? Is there anyone who is not understanding anything, Please let me know. Solve the equations and tell me what is the value of beta 1 hat and what is the value of beta 2 hat. And also find out the value of R12 square, so that we get some idea what is the correlation between x1 and x2 in this case. And then I'll change a little bit in Sxx and Sxy metrics and vectors. This little bit change I have done. Anybody could find out the value of beta 1 hat, beta 2 hat in the first case? Shubhangi? Got the value?
Ma'am, 1 actually.
1, yes, very good.
Beta 2 equals to 1.
Yeah, these two values is equal to 1. The values will be equal to 1. Titir, got the values?
Huh, ma'am.
Okay. And tell me what is the value of R12 square? Use the simple formula. Ritoja got the value of correlation?
ম্যাম বিটা 1 বিটা 2 টা বেরিয়ে করছি।
Okay. Anybody got the value of R12 square? Rudra, what is the formula we should use?
Covariance between x1 and x2 divided by standard deviation of x1 into standard deviation of x2.
Variances, because R12 square we are considering.
Oh, the whole covariance is whole square divided by standard variance of x1 into variance of x2.
So looking at the values, what will be the numerator?
149.
No, not 149. It is the first case. For
That
SX6,
that. Oh, sorry, ma'am. That will be 150 square divided by 200 into 113.
very good. Very good. So it is 150 square divided by 200 into 113. So this value you need to find out. This will be, I think, 0.995. Please check once again.
Yes, ma'am, 0.99.
Okay, so here really there is a very high correlation between x1 and x2. It is 0.995. In the first case, we are getting the value 1, 1. Next, I have made a little bit change in SXX and SXY. In SXX, just I changed the values by 1 in each case, reduced the value by 1 in each case. And in case of SXY by 2.5. Following the same formula, derive beta 1 hat and beta 2 hat under second context. If anybody gets the value, please let me know what are the values you are getting here. Orkodeep got the value in the second case?
না ম্যাম করছি।
Aditya?
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম করছি। ম্যাম অ্যাপ্রক্সিমেটলি
Approximately?
মোটামুটি সেম ভ্যালুজ আসছে, মানে বিটা 1 হ্যাটটা 1ই এসছে।
Beta 1 hat to 1 এসেছে? আমার তো আসেনি। Ritoja, got the value?
ম্যাম করছি।
ম্যাম একবার ভ্যালুস গুলো দেখাবেন?
Matrix
Yes, ma'am.
equations are 199 beta 1 hat okay, plus 149 beta 2 hat is equal to 347.5. Then 149 beta 1 hat plus 112 beta 2 hat is equal to 261.5. Aditya is telling that getting the same value. Rudra got the values?
ম্যাম 3 আসছে
3 is beta 2 hat or beta 1 hat?
beta 2 hat
Yes, beta 2 hat is equal to 3. Very good.
And beta 1 hat is minus 5.
Minus 0.5.
Yes, minus 0.5.
Yes, minus half. Okay, so it is minus 0.5 and this is 3. So I think
Ma'am,
Aditya,
beta 2 to 3.5.
3, simply
ম্যাম 3 আছে 3 আর minus 0.5 আসছে একটু এরর হয়েছিল
So if you get these values, you are finding that for a little bit change in the sample composition, how the estimated coefficients are varying significantly, you know. Under the first circumstances, the values were, both the values were positive. Second context, the first one is negative, you know. In the first context, both the values are equal to 1, and if you look at the absolute value, that is also changing drastically, okay? So sign is changing, value is changing, everything is changing, okay? So I hope everybody is getting, by this time, could complete it and getting this thing. So in presence of very high correlation between the explanatory variables for a little bit change in the sample composition, I hope you will agree that there is a chance that the estimated values are varying significantly. So the values are not robust. You know, the values are not robust. So this is the second problem. This is the second problem. So this aspect of multicollinearity can be checked in practice by deleting or adding some observations and examining the sensitivity of the estimators to such changes. So presence of multicollinearity does not hamper the blue property. We get best but imprecise estimates, okay? We are getting imprecise estimates. If we change the sample composition marginally, then the sampling fluctuations of the estimators will be very, very high. So this is the second problem. Third problem, you are already familiar with that. Another symptom of multicollinearity is that R square, that is the multiple correlation for the equation, is high, but the partial R squares are low. Okay, so what is happening? Partial R square related to a particular regression coefficient is measuring or trying to measure the capability of a particular X given the rest of the explanatory variables in explaining Y. Now, if there is multicollinearity, rest of the variables will basically explain the entire variation in Y. So that particular variable has nothing new to incorporate. Actually, that particular variable is functionally related to all these variables, okay? So if you pick and choose a single one, you will find its contribution is nil, because this picked variable is related to the rest, okay? So this is also a typical problem in presence of multicollinearity. So these are the main consequences of multicollinearity. Now, as a rule of thumb, so if you are given a data set, how you can first try to understand whether there is multicollinearity or not. Generally, what we do, we try to estimate the correlation metrics among the explanatory variables, and looking at the metrics of correlation, multiple correlation among explanatory variables, we try to guess some idea, whether there is multicollinearity or not. Okay, so the first task can be, to consider the multiple correlation. Okay, if we consider the multiple correlation among the explanatory variables, we will get some idea, about presence of multicollinearity. Now, there are several formal measures of multicollinearity. Among these measures, our focus will be on variance inflation factor, VIF method, by which formally we will try to detect the multicollinearity. Again, theoretically, there are several counter arguments against these variance inflation factor. However, this is the most popular method. And in the Stata class 2, in the next class, you will get the idea of variance inflation factor, VIF, variance inflation factor. Actually, variance inflation factor is based on the first consequence, in presence of multicollinearity, there is a high chance that variance will be inflated. Okay, so VIF, this measure is based on that idea, first consequence. As the name suggests, a variance inflation factor quantifies how much the variance is inflated. A variance inflation factor exists for each of the predictors in a multiple regression model. So for each of the explanatory variable, you can calculate this VIF. Actually, for each of the regression coefficient, you have the variance. So you can calculate it for each of the estimated values of the regression coefficients. The variance inflation factor for the estimated regression coefficient beta hat I is denoted by VIF beta hat I. VIF, this will be not J, rather I. Okay, is the factor by which the variance of beta hat I is inflated by the existence of correlation among the predicted variables in the model. So VIF beta I hat is measured by this formula, 1 by 1 minus Ri square, 1 by 1 minus Ri square. Actually, in the variance of beta hat formula, you got sigma square divided by SII into 1 minus Ri square. Among these components, this 1 by 1 minus Ri square is considered as the measure of VIF, variance inflation factor. Okay, how much the variance has been inflated because of presence of this Ri square, high Ri square. Okay, so VIF is based on this component of variance of beta hat. You go through this measure, so this is the idea. Now there are limitations. It is a regression specific measure, not for the equation as a whole, regressor specific measure, not for the equation as a whole. Okay, so for each of the explanatory variable, you have to do it, you have to find it. Again, it tells that situation is not ideal, but fails to measure the degree or seriousness of multicollinearity or degree or extent of deviation from ideal situation. Okay, so there are several limitations. However, this is the most popular measure. And in our applied part 2, we will consider this VIF to get some idea whether there is multicollinearity or not. Apart from VIF, there is another method. Actually, in using the software, we don't use it, condition number. So you can check this method from any of your textbooks, condition number. However, I'm not developing it in the class because in the applied counterpart, we will consider only variance inflation factor. So this is all about the detection of multicollinearity. Now, what can be the remedy? Okay, how we will go for remedial methods? What can be the remedy of multicollinearity now? So please write down in your paper. There are several solutions to multicollinearity problem. Please write down. There are several solutions to multicollinearity problem. Among these solutions, the popular methods are number one, dropping variables. So when you are considering the whole multiple correlation matrix among your explanatory variables, if you find that a typical variable, say x1, is highly related to many of the variables, many of the variables. It is related to say 7 or 8 variables, highly related to 7 or 8 variables. So those 7, 8 variables you can drop. Actually, x1 is taking care of all those 7, 8 variables. Okay, so dropping variables is a popular method. If a particular variable is very highly correlated with several variables, in that case, those variables can be dropped. However, the thing is not that simple, because x1 may be very highly correlated to x2, and therefore you may decide you will drop x2. However, x2 may be highly correlated with, say, 5 variables. Okay, in that case, what you will do? So all these issues will come. So it's not that easy. Next, using extraneous estimates. Number 2, using extraneous estimates. So bring several new variables in the system. Okay, so this is the second aspect, just reverse to the first one. Next, 3, getting more data. Multicollinearity is essentially a data-related problem. It is not a model-related problem. It is not related to the disturbance matrix of the variable, or it is not related to UI. Okay, so it is a data-related problem. So getting more data may solve the situation. And number 4, write down using principal components. So this last one is very, very important, principal component analysis, PCA, principal component analysis. Okay, so here actually we consider the root-based analysis. So it may happen a particular eigenvalue may cover or may be used as an umbrella factor. So it can cover several variables. It can cover several variables or several aspects which we are considering in the regression model. So in that case, that eigenvalue will be considered as an important factor in the database. So in this way, actually, we extract variances and create trying to find out the eigenvalues which can be used as umbrella factors. So this is a very important technique, and all of you need to know all these things. This principal component analysis we will discuss in detail, both the theory and the practical, in the next semester. Okay, because it belongs to the multivariate technique analysis. So before understanding the principal component analysis, you need to learn several other issues. So that we will consider in the next semester. And after that, we will go for this multivariate technique. This is very, very useful and important technique for research, any kind of research. Okay, so we will do this thing later. So in the meantime, you check dropping variables method using extraneous information, you are getting more data, so all these things, you look at all these patterns, you develop the things from any of the text. You can check Madala, you can check, in Johnston, you will not get the things in detail. However, in Stock and Watson or Woolridge, you can use any of these 3 books and develop the matter on your own, because these things are easy and you will be able to do on your own. So principal component is not there in the syllabus because we have to discuss this thing in detail in some other semester. Okay, so with this, I'm closing the multicollinearity section. Do anyone have any question on multicollinearity part? So introducing the issue, done. Consequences, done. Detection, done. VIF I did in the class, and you will check at condition number. VIF we will do in the practical class too. And remedial method you will develop on your own. However, you will consider the lighter methods, the dropping variables, etc. The more formal method we will discuss in some other semester. The next thing which we generally discuss in context of X matrix, that is related to misspecification. Okay, misspecification of the model. Suppose you need to consider the logarithmic transformation, however, you are using the variable directly. If you consider the logarithmic transformation, there are different possibilities. You are taking log of all y variables, x variables, that is log kind of model. Or you may need to take logarithmic of the y variable only, no logarithm for the x, or the reverse, log values for x, but no log for y, that is the semi-log version. So you are considering y on x, however, this specification is not right. You need to consider log of y on log of x. This can be one thing. Another thing, x square or x cube, these are important. However, you are considering the linear version, x only. Okay, so this can be another kind of misspecification. You need to take the higher order of the explanatory variables. However, you are not doing so. Another problem may be you need to take the lagged explanatory variables. Actually, x is not affecting y, rather x t minus 3 say is really affecting y. Okay, so the model is a lagged model. However, you misspecified the model and you are considering the simple structure. Okay, so these are the possibilities, So please check section 2.2 from Johnston and Donato. Section 2.2. Okay. This section is wonderfully written. Several transformation of y and x, how you need to handle, etc. So transformations of variables, that part you need to do. I hope you are understanding. This is from chapter 2. So 2.2 you need to do. You will get idea about conversions of the variables, etc. So again, you check all these things. If anyone have any question regarding the transformation of the variable, how we can present the model rightly, etc., that I'll answer to the next class. So with this, I'm closing the regression diagnostics on X. And I'll move to the regression diagnostics on U. Okay. So I'm moving towards the regression diagnostics on U. More specifically, we will talk about heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation. What are the meanings of heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation? How our disturbance matrix will be disturbed in presence of heteroscedasticity and autocorrelations? What are the consequences? How we can detect formally heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation, and what will be the remedial methods. Now, before going to the standard discussion of heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation, today I'll talk about generalized least square technique, because the weighted least square technique, which we consider in context of heteroscedasticity, and the row difference technique, which we consider in case of autocorrelation, these are different versions of generalized least square technique. Okay, so today we will go through the generalized least square technique. So estimation of a linear model with non-spherical disturbance matrix, non-spherical disturbances. Now, what is spherical disturbances? If we can write the variance covariance matrix of the error term as sigma square I, in that case, it is the spherical disturbance matrix. All the diagonal elements will be sigma square, all the off diagonal elements will be equal to 0. In other words, it is sigma square I. If it is in this format, we call it a spherical variance covariance matrix. However, in presence of heteroscedasticity as well as autocorrelation, we do not get the disturbance matrix in this format. All the variance values are in the diagonal, these will be different, and in the off diagonal positions we will have non-zero values. Okay, so if we have non-zero values in the off diagonal position and the variance values differ, we consider the disturbance matrix as non-spherical disturbance matrix. We present this kind of disturbance matrix by sigma square omega. So look at the file, okay, look at the text. It is sigma square omega. So it is presented as where omega is of order n by n. However, all these values and here you have the values, these values are not equal to 0. They are R values, at all the positions you will have the values, okay, non-zero values. So this is the structure. So now we are getting, instead of getting sigma square I, now we are getting sigma square omega. Now how I'm writing sigma square? Because for sigma 1 square, sigma 2 square, what we consider it is sigma square into, say, summation xi. If I consider the thing in that way, so sigma square I can take common. In that case, here you will have summation x1 square, summation x2 square, up to summation xn square, etc. So I'm presenting the thing as sigma square omega. So let's consider the regression model y is equal to x beta plus u, the multiple regression model as we considered earlier. However, u is following the normal distribution, multivariate normal distribution with expectation of ui's is equal to 0 vector, and the variance covariance matrix is given by sigma square omega, where omega is a positive definite matrix of order n. All the components are non-zero component. So this is the structure of the model. If we get this kind of structure, we try to find out a non-singular matrix P such that omega can be presented as PP transpose. So what I'm telling that, if the disturbance matrix is sigma square omega, we find out a transformation matrix, a transformer, P, a matrix P, which can be presented, or the transformer has a particular property. P into P transpose will be exactly equal to omega. Now, if it follows this property and P is non-singular in nature, we can transform omega, pre-multiplying it by P inverse and post-multiplying it by P prime inverse, so that after transformation, this omega becomes I. Now, if somehow you can make omega I, in that case, you are moving back to the classical position. Your error variance covariance matrix will follow homoscedasticity along with non-autocorrelation. So your main task is to find out a non-singular matrix P. This is your main task. Once you get this P, you will be able to transform omega to get I, identity matrix. Once you get I, then you will be able to apply the least square technique to find out the best linear unbiased estimators. Now, many of you or all of you did weighted least square in presence of heteroscedasticity. So in case of heteroscedasticity, using a particular type of weights, we are trying to present omega as identity matrix I. After adjusting with weights, we will transform omega in such a way so that it will become I. In case of autocorrelation, when you are considering the row differencing method, again, you are trying to find out a P, the transformation matrix, which will make your omega I, and the situation or the problem will be resolved, and you will be able to estimate the parameters using the least square technique. Okay, so use of weighted least square technique or use of row differencing method, all these things are nothing but trying to find out a typical transformation matrix which will make omega or which will transform omega to I. Okay, so in general, we present the situation in this way. We pre-multiply the model y is equal to x beta plus u by non-singular matrix P inverse such that P inverse y, we are transforming the model, P inverse y is equal to P inverse x beta plus P inverse u. We represent this as y star, x star beta. So P inverse y is y star, P inverse x is x star, P inverse u is u star. Expectation of u star, then if we check the property of u for the transformed model, expectation of U star is equal to expectation of P inverse U, which is equal to P inverse expectation of U is equal to 0. More interestingly, expectation of U star prime, okay? U prime was autocorrelated and heteroscedastic. However, if we consider U star transpose, expectation of this can be presented as expectation of P inverse U transpose, P inverse transpose. Expectation will be operated on U transpose part. Expectation of U transpose, this is equal to sigma square omega. So sigma square I can keep here, omega is there. However, P inverse omega P prime inverse, that is nothing but I. So expectation, while expectation of U prime is sigma square omega, that is heteroscedastic and autocorrelated, expectation of U star prime is sigma square I. So it is homoscedastic and non-autocorrelated. Hence, transformed model provides the classical error. So when next we will go for heteroscedasticity, autocorrelation, we will present different methods of estimation or remedial methods. Remember that actually you are trying to do this thing, trying to make this kind of transformation. Okay. Now applying ordinary least square, as these properties are holding, you know, transformed model is a classical model. We can apply the ordinary least square technique to the transformed model and find out the estimated values of beta hat vector. So these estimated values are called generalized least square estimates because we started with a general variance covariance matrix, then we transformed it, and then we are applying the least square technique to it. As we started with a general model, heteroscedastic and autocorrelated model, we call beta hat the GLS values, generalized least square values. For the transformed model, the values of beta hat should be x star prime, x star inverse, x star prime, y star, because this is the transformed model. Okay, so the beta hat GLS is x star prime, x star inverse, x star prime, y star. Okay, so that can be presented, you know, then we are presenting the star values, x star that was equal to P inverse x, okay, P inverse x. So if you take transpose, it will be x transpose, P inverse transpose. For x star, we are writing P inverse x, whole inverse. Again, x star prime is x prime, P inverse prime, y star is P inverse y, okay. So this P inverse prime, P inverse, can we write this omega inverse? Everybody? Can we replace P inverse prime, P inverse by omega inverse? Omega is P prime. Okay, omega is equal to P transpose. So if I take P inverse transpose P inverse, this will be exactly equal to omega inverse. P transpose P is equal to omega. So inverse of P transpose into P inverse, that will be omega inverse. So we are replacing this P inverse transpose P inverse by omega inverse and getting this estimate. So it is very close to OLS. However, you are finding that in the estimated value, the variance covariance matrix or inverse of variance covariance matrix of the error term is appearing. In the GLS estimator, the inverse of variance covariance matrix of the error term is appearing. X prime omega inverse X whole inverse, X prime omega inverse Y. So this will be the estimated value. So X prime X inverse X prime Y will be now revised to X prime omega inverse X whole inverse into X prime omega inverse Y. Now, if I think about var of beta hat GLS, after getting estimated values of beta hat, we consider the property of beta hat. So variance covariance matrix of beta hat GLS, that will be given by sigma square X prime omega inverse X whole inverse. In a standard model or ordinary model, it is given by sigma square X prime X inverse. However, in the GLS model, this X prime X inverse will be replaced by X prime omega inverse X whole inverse. Under most of the circumstances, you will not have the value of this sigma square, and you need to replace it by its estimated value A square or sigma hat square. The value of A square or sigma hat square is RSS by degrees of freedom, where RSS we present by E prime E. Here the same thing we are doing. However, your RSS residual sum of square value has changed to E transpose omega inverse E divided by n minus k. So sigma hat square is E prime omega inverse E divided by n minus k. So remember all these things. These are very close to your ordinary model. Everywhere this omega inverse term is new. Okay. And I hope you are understanding the logic. These GLS estimators are consistent, efficient, and asymptotically normal. Okay. In a small sample case, we consider these as blue, unbiased, having minimum variance property, and follow the normal distribution. Here, all small sample properties I am replacing by large sample properties, consistent in place of unbiased, in place of minimum variance efficient, and in place of normal, we are considering it to be asymptotically normal. Okay. So if we consider these beta hat GLS, all these beta hat values are following the normal distribution with, or here I have considered the standardized value. N hat, actually beta hat minus expectation of beta hat divided by standard error of beta hat, that kind of structure, the standardized value I have considered, that will follow the normal distribution with mean 0 and the variance covariance matrix X prime omega inverse X whole inverse. Okay. Now, if you can remember up to these, the GLS estimators are consistent, efficient, asymptotically normal, then also it's more than sufficient. Try to understand the essence of generalized least square technique, the specific methods, that is the weighted least square technique, as well as the row difference technique I'll discuss in the context. Any question? Any question? It's fine to all of you. Anyone, any question?